So just thinking about you and kind of all your iterations of your career, even just thus far, like you've established this amazing network of people, and you have such a good network. And even Chris, I've seen like when people ask him questions, he's like, "Oh, let me introduce you to this person." Like it seems like you've got someone in your Rolodex for everyone. How do you like nurture those relationships? Like knowing that there's probably so many, and even listening to you record with Ali earlier about like Glossy and when it was Light Pink, and like looking for different people who have done it and who are a few steps ahead, and them kind of gatekeeping. Like how do you manage all of these kind of relationships?
I think it's people can hear it and be like, oh my God, you have to go to like lunch and dinner with all of these people. Some are the relationships where it's like, oh, they have a book out. Great. How can I actually not just have them on the podcast, but how could I help them get their book out? Like, what does this look like? If I have the same, or if I vibe with their energy, if I'm like, oh, this feels really good, it feels good for me to help them. So there's no like, oh, in the future they could help me with this. Maybe, I mean, that's always a thought. Maybe in the future something cool will connect over something cool, because it's not just about like doing something or having someone do something for you. It's like, this is our life. You know this. Like, this is what we love to do. And so collaborating to us, it feels freaking amazing. And if that brings money, that's kind of how it should be. Like life, your career should be like that. And so the connections, it's just like every single day, I think it needs to start to become part of your identity. So you don't have to do it all at once. It's just like every single day when you meet someone, if you like them, it's looking at what could I do for them to like help them? Like what's their goal? What is something that they're up to that doesn't make them lift a finger? That doesn't actually cost them anything, time, energy, nothing. That maybe if they don't even go on social for 2 days, they might not even know that I did it, but I'm going to do it anyway. And so those are the things I'm always looking at is, okay, someone will pop in my head and I'll be like, okay, how could I help them? Or what do they have coming out? What is a goal? And if you ask that every day, you kind of find your people. You'll find anywhere from maybe in the beginning 5 to 10 people that just keep kind of coming into your realm of, oh, I really like them. They've added value to my life. How can I help them? And I think that's a perfect spot to start.
Okay, that is amazing advice. And I think that's something that a lot of people do not live by. And I think this is actually like why I'm so attracted to you and Chris, is because that's a philosophy I live under too, is like, how do I add value? Asking like when there's a partnership, like at the end of every single like connection call I do is like, what do you need in your right now in your business? How can I add value
you're
to
so
you?
good at this.
Like I try, and it's funny, someone had asked me recently, they were like, oh, like you're so connected to Chris, and I feel like I've done a bunch of the same stuff you have, and I don't have the same relationship. And I was like, yeah, I was like, but I pour in. I try to pour in as much as possible. And if I think someone would be great for Roundtable, I make the recommendation. If I listen to a great podcast, I'll share it. And I think that's a great way to build relationships with your mentors, is by like showing up for them in the seasons where they're selling something or they need something. And not, I don't ever expect anything in return, but I think living in that energy is really helpful when building a community, because I do see often, like even from running my own events, there is a level of people expecting something. And when they do things, there's like this huge pull of like, well, I'm hoping that they'll do this for me, they'll do that. And when I feel like when you live in that energy, like the good stuff doesn't even get to happen.
It doesn't.
Yeah. Even the most magical things that you're not even expecting, like the things that, like the really cool collaborations that come out of those rooms or those relationships don't get to happen when there's such a tight hold on it.
You know, it's got to feel, even when you do things for someone, it's like, we do the things, or when you start really like mastering networking for yourself, you do the things that feel fun and easy for you, even though sometimes, yes, they're hard and you go out of your way, but they still feel like fun and easy. So I think what happens when people do something for you, but then immediately like ask you to do something back, what it does is it like spikes your nervous system, and you're like, oh, I'm not going to ever take anything from that person again. Because can you imagine asking someone during like their book tour or doing something nice, but then immediately asking them for something where they don't even have an ounce of energy left? They're like, oh my God, that felt really crappy. It felt like a bait and switch. And that's how they'll remember you, whether they say it or not. And so I think there are true rules to like this, exactly what you're saying, like do it with an energy of zero expectation.
What's your like best tip if someone's looking for an ask? Like, you know, they're asking, and I think use these sparingly is kind of my thought. Like when you because there's people who sell something constantly.
Yep.
But what are your tips if someone's like, okay, I have a launch coming up and I'm looking for some support from my peers, my community, like what would you tell people to do?
Well, if it's, I mean, I would say they need to be warm
Yeah.
before that. So if it's an ask, I think when you do what we're saying, it's hard to just make a cold ask. I think it's
Yeah.
really important that you've nurtured that community and given something for free for a while. So if it's close friends, I think it's totally fine to make asks around launches, but even then I let them off the hook. I think the key to an ask is always letting people off the hook on like in the ask. So when I say let them off the hook in the ask, it's like, hey, I have this launch coming up. I know that you're, it could be super aligned with what you're doing. So it could be value. And maybe we could even talk about like you being an affiliate or a 50-50 percentage split or whatever that looks like adding value for them as well, if you're going to do the ask. And if you're into this, awesome. If not, no problem. But I'd love to jump on a call if you are and see how we could really make this work for both of us. And so I let them off the hook. And I said, and I was trying to find a way that it could be beneficial for them or their community.
I love that. I love the the reciprocity that comes with that, because I think, again, it's very easy, I think, to make the ask. I get these all the time. I bet you get these all the time, but I get these all the time in my DMs where someone's like, hey, I've got like a book tour, I've got this going on, and I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind sharing it. And like, I kind of feel like I'm at capacity and I can't constantly be selling other people's stuff. But then there's people who you're so in alignment with, where Ali and Matt are doing a mastermind, and I was like, oh, it's a no-brainer. Like, I'm happy to share that. Like, let me just send me the link. Like, happy to do it. They didn't need to ask. And so I think it's like about finding that sweet spot of like, who are the people you've also built goodwill with, to be able to make that ask.
It's interesting because this is such a weird, it's so hard when you're kind of like coming up on the come up, and you're getting all these people asking you to do things. It's okay to not answer certain DMs. It's okay to just mark that and delete it, because all DMs and all emails does not mean it requires all of your energy and attention, because that actually takes you away from your mission. And a lot of times those are the people who maybe they're just so many people don't understand this, and they'll just send a quick ask and they'll never be in your community again. And it just doesn't feel good. So it's not going to feel authentic. Give your time to the people who are going to be on your journey. Find those people and go deep with them. What I did in the beginning is I was just spread so thin, and it was like, oh, I'm so scared that someone's going to say that I'm mean or I didn't answer. Or
that's what I was gonna ask.
Then you get it confirmed where you maybe you answer one you wouldn't normally answer, and they're like, oh my God, I'm so glad you answered, because this girl doesn't answer her DMs and I think she's like this, or she says she's like this, but I think she's like this. And I'm like, maybe she just has better boundaries than me. And so it's making peace with the fact that you do not have to answer every message that comes in, because the more popular you get, the more messages are going to come in. So you really have to, I think when you're clear on who you are, that you're not going to have many problems. Like, of course, some people are going to say some things. We've had plenty of things said about us through the years that you can't control. But I think when your intention truly is like, hey, sending him love, but I can't answer all these. You know what I mean? It's not like, oh, I'm ignoring you. It's like, can't do it. And do what you can with who you can, and go deep like that. And, I think what really helps is like, if this is people know this is who I am now. I talk about it on podcasts. I write about it. Like, I talk about boundaries. So when people get that feeling from me, they know that I have a boundary, and it's not that I don't like them. It's that I can't do it. So I think the difference is, it's like sooner or later you're going to get caught being yourself. You might as well tell people who you are up front. So now I just try to tell people who I am up front. Like,
I love that. Well, it's funny because we ran an event, and someone had reached out to me to have a meeting, and then I rebooked it, and she canceled it, and then sent me this email just being like, this clearly isn't a priority for you, and like, just wanted to let you know. And I spiraled about it. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, like, how could I do that to someone? That feels so crappy when it's done to me. Like, I was so upset about it. And then when I realized, I was like, oh, like, if that's what it's going to take for that person to be upset, I'm never going to be an energetic match for them. I'm never going to be the person they want me to be if I had to reschedule a meeting and gave lots of notice and felt like, gave a great excuse. Like, this is not going to be a good match for me.
And your life's only going to get busier, and that's only going to happen more and more and more. I know.
Lori.
You're going to be traveling, and you're still going to want a podcast, so you're going to have to rebook some people like 3 to 5 times. It's going to be your worst nightmare. But everybody has to do that. And so we all have to operate in a way with like grace and, like, just understanding for everyone. And then it can be your decision. I've had a lot of people who have, canceled on me 4 times, who I'm like, I'm not even upset about it. I've decided that that energy of the excitement is done. So I'm like, hey, don't even worry about it. Let's see if this comes back like next year around something. You know what I mean? So it's like, I can only get as much grace from people as I'm willing to give to people. So I always think of that when I'm experiencing things. And then also when you get something like that, that person doesn't give themselves any grace, which means they're never going to move past where they're at.
Okay, that's so insightful, Lori, because I just think it's so easy for us to like turn around on ourselves. And like, I know even for myself, like the other day someone bailed on a meeting and I was like, oh, that's annoying. And then I was like, actually, this is great. Like, I get half an hour back to myself. But I was also like, I've also done this to someone before, right? Like, and it's living in that, like, and being like in that energy. So I have a bit of a pivot question for you, but I'm curious, Lori, like, in this season where you've built so many different communities and done so with so much leadership, so much grace, like, how have you brought people along on the journey with you?
I think just always, so I always just try to document where I'm at on any type of social, whatever it is. So if you have a podcast, like my quickies have always said where I'm at. I mean, they literally come out a day or two after I record them. So it's like really real time. When I was starting on Facebook, it was like, what am I feeling on this particular day? When it was, you know, anything with social where I can do real time talking about how I feel and where I'm at, like, I'm going to be sharing that because I know that connecting with people at the human level is the only way to bring people with you. And so I know that if I'm feeling uncomfortable around a pivot or upset around something, that someone else does. And the best part about, you know, I think the best part about like being human is the fact that you can just say where you're at and connect with people who are also where you're at and bring them with you.
How do you balance the want and the need to be like a leader? I'm putting in air quotes, like a leader in whatever industry you're in, and also the vulnerabilities of like being a business owner, where sometimes, like, you saw this with Light Pink, like sometimes it doesn't go the way you're hoping. And I know that was a really hard period for you, especially with having investors and such. Like, how did you balance like showing up authentically, but also for your community, but also being like, shit, this is hard?
I tend to wait to share until I have a solution. So I share with a solution. And so sometimes that'll take me 5 minutes. Sometimes that'll take me a week. You know, when I was going through the tough stuff with Light Pink, I wasn't talking about that stuff. I was saying things were challenging, but maybe I was talking about other challenges. But I had to solve that without other people's opinions and without the energy of that. I had to like let that be very sacred. But as a leader, I think that is the key, is share. But share with the solution, like share with what you're going to do or what you're working to do. Like, here's where I'm at, but here's what I'm doing. Like, nobody wants someone to come on and just be like crying again on Instagram. We're all kind of like, okay, like, you're leaving it doesn't feel good. You're just like, okay, now I'm crying. Like, but what are we going to do about it? So
it's interesting. I did see someone recently do something like this where they like cried about a problem, and immediately my gut reaction was like, I need to solve this problem. And so I was like, okay, I need to make some intros for them. Like, and then I realized that this was like not my circus. But it's just interesting how, because of social media being the space where we're all like sharing so much so authentically, and people are looking up to, especially you, Lori, like as a leader kind of in entrepreneurship, like, it must be challenging when you have this community of people who are depending on you, but then also you also have your own shit that you're going through, and like, being able to kind of be both.
It's keeping something sacred, for sure. And just, you know, there's how much time is on stories. Like, you maybe go through and look at 10 minutes of stories every day, but then we have, you know, 12 hours of things that we can be working on. And like, you know, so I think it's choosing what you share, being vulnerable, but choosing what you share.
I love that answer, because I think one of the questions I get the most about social media when people are asking, they ask like, oh, I don't want to share everything. And I'm always like, please don't. Like, I'd rather you didn't. But like,
exactly.
But it's like that comfort level of like sharing what feels good, not selling 24/7 and bringing people in on the journey, but also being okay with like having a life outside of social that works for you.
Totally. There are whole weekends where we'll have 10 people, you know, at our house or doing different things, and none of that is on social, because I'm like, these are just, sometimes I want to share it, sometimes I don't. And I think it's like always checking in with what do I want to put out there? Like, do I care that I have to document everything? And I could definitely be better with it. But I think the whole like share with a solution around anything that you're doing is going to make you feel like you're in more of a place of power.
Okay, Lori, my last question for you. So if someone was new to building a community, so they're like rallying around anything, like any kind of business, and they want to start like bringing people in on it, what is the thing that you would tell them to focus on?
Making the community member the hero. Somehow making them be able to have a leadership position, or somehow giving them recognition. Somehow letting them like help put something together. Like that's the fastest way for sure, because that people want to feel truly like a part of it. And you can't just be a part of it if you're not a part of it.
And is that something, because I know you had a super successful membership. You were an OG in memberships, I would say. Yeah. Is that like, was that part of the
we would call people out. We had monthly. So we had like monthly members who had spotlights. They got to write up their own blog posts. They were leaders in the group. They got to like be on calls. They got to teach. So definitely.
I love it. Lori, do you want to tell everyone a little bit about some of the things you're working on right now?
My main thing is Glossy. It is Glossy all day, and then podcast. So Earn Your Happy is the podcast, but getglossy.com, GETGLOCI. And we have an awesome affiliate community. And if you do well at the affiliate level, you can go into the ambassador level, which means more money. It also means more experiences. It means more access to people you may not get access to. So it's pretty cool.
Amazing. I can't wait for it to come to Canada. I know we've talked about this a bit already. It's coming. I can't wait. I cannot wait. Well, Laura, I just want to say firstly, thank you so much for being here, being part of the podcast. And you were on my list. I had a top 5 list. You were like
number 5.5.
No, I bet
you were number 24. All of mine canceled.
No, you were on the top 5 list. I only have one left. It's Jenna Kutcher.
It's coming.
It's coming. I got to get in there. But I was just going to say, like, I have to share a really quick story for you. So I was talking to a friend, it's the same friend last week, who was like, oh my gosh, like Isogenics Lori, and was like so excited about it. And she was like, is Lori, and I said this a bit to you beforehand, but I didn't want to tell you everything. Didn't want to spill all my jelly beans. But she was like, is Lori like as great as she is on social? Like she seems so funny, like she seems so cool. And I'm like, she is truly one of the people out there who is better. Like you're funnier, like you're funnier offline, but like so kind, so generous, like, and you just show up so fully everywhere that I see you. But the twist of this too was that I was like, Lori's also the best is yet to come for. And like, I really feel that for you, that Lori, like you've done so much, like building and growing and like loving on so many people. And like, you were saying, you're like, oh, there's probably people who've said bad stuff about us, like in the past around boundaries and stuff like that. But like, any room I've ever been in where people talk about you and Chris, it's with like glowy eyes, like the heart eye emojis, and people like love the work that you do and how much you pour in other people. And so this podcast is an extension of that, and like my business wouldn't be where it is without you and Chris. Like I say that all the time. And so sorry, DreamX people, but yeah, I'm just so grateful for you and the impact you've had on my life. So I just wanted to say thank you and thanks for being here.
Oh, well, you've just been like, it's been so much fun to become friends with you and watch you grow, and just it's one of those community things where you watch people and you're like, that girl is like doing big things, and then you're like, that girl is amazing, and then you're like, that girl needs to be my friend.
Oh, Lori, oh god, I'm gonna cry. Thank you so much. And yeah, this is just the beginning, hopefully for us both. And everyone, go grab some Glow C. Make sure that you drink it. Go listen to Ali Aruta's Inspire and Move podcast as well, with her episode with Lori. And yeah, just so grateful to you.
You're amazing. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks so much for listening to Community with me, Christina Bartold, and I'm just so excited to continue the conversations. If you're looking to grow your community and learn more about social, join us at thesocialbusinessclub.ca and use the code podcast to get your first month for $1. Share this episode with your friends and on social, or leave a review. It means the world.